Click on the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel, like and share this video and engage in our comments.
I wasn't planning on opening the door in my robe. I'd just finished my shower, my hair still damp, the smell of lavender soap clinging to me. I thought I had the whole afternoon to myself. My husband, Daniel, had gone on a trip, something for work, something last minute, and he wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday evening. The knock came while I was folding towels, soft and steady, like someone who didn't want to be a bother. I looked through the peephole and blinked. It was Pastor Elijah. Of course I let him in. He smiled the way he always does, kind, calm, like he knew something the rest of us didn't. I pulled my robe a little tighter and stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. "Pastor, this is a surprise. He said he was just in the neighborhood, thought he'd check in, said Daniel had mentioned the trip in passing after church last week, and he figured it might be a good time to pray with me. That's how he put it. Pray with you." It wasn't weird at first. He'd been to our house plenty of times, for dinners, birthdays, sometimes just casual visits. He was a friend to us both, more than a pastor. At least, that's how it had felt. We sat on the couch and talked for a bit, about church stuff, about how tired I looked, about how long it had been since Daniel and I had taken any time for ourselves. He noticed things, not in a creepy way, at least not then, just observant. At one point, I laughed a little too hard at something he said. I don't even remember what it was. Something small, something harmless. But it lingered between us. His eyes didn't leave mine, not right away. There was a flicker, quick, subtle, but I caught it. And I didn't say anything. I just tucked my legs under me and nodded like I hadn't noticed. Then he asked if he could pray. We stood, and he held my hands. His grip was warm and sure. He closed his eyes, started saying soft, low words about strength, about temptation, about loneliness. And somewhere in the middle of it, I felt something shift. I wasn't praying anymore. I was listening to his voice, to the space between us, to the way his thumbs moved gently over the backs of my hands. When he opened his eyes again, I didn't pull away. It was quiet. Still. I don't know how long we stood there like that. I don't even remember taking a step forward, but I must have because suddenly we were closer, close enough that I could smell the faint hint of mint on his breath, close enough to feel the heat of his chest. He reached up and brushed a wet strand of hair from my face. I let him, and that's when I should have stopped it. His fingers lingered just a second too long as he brushed that strand of hair behind my ear. I could feel my heartbeat tick up, steady but undeniable. It wasn't what he did. It was what he didn't do. He didn't back away. He didn't pretend it was nothing, and neither did I. I told myself it was innocent, that I was just grateful someone noticed me, cared enough to stop by, to check in, to see me, not just pass by me in the kitchen or call from the other room or ask if I'd paid the internet bill. Elijah looked at me like I was standing still in a world that kept moving too fast. Like I was still worth pausing for. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, but my voice came out soft, a little breathy. I hated how obvious it sounded, but he nodded like he hadn't noticed. "Tea sounds good," he said, and followed me into the kitchen. I moved around the counter, busying myself with the kettle, the mugs, pretending like I didn't feel the weight of his eyes on me. But I did. I felt it all the way up my spine, like a slow pull. I adjusted the tie on my robe again. It wasn't even coming undone. I just needed something for my hands to do. He leaned against the doorway, watching quietly. "You always smell like something gentle," he said after a moment. I paused. Gentle? Yeah, like clean laundry, or rain, or peace. He gave a soft laugh, then looked down, like maybe he hadn't meant to say it out loud. I didn't know what to do with that. No one had said something like that to me in years. Daniel loved me, sure, but there's a difference between love and noticing. Sometimes they go hand in hand, sometimes they drift apart. When the kettle whistled, I almost jumped. I poured the tea, my hands trembling just slightly, and set his mug on the counter. He took it, his fingers brushing mine again. Our eyes locked. There was so much space between what was right and what we were doing, and it was getting narrower by the second. I could have stepped back, could have changed the subject, could have excused myself to change clothes. But I didn't. I stayed there, still barefoot, still damp from the shower, robe pulled close around me but suddenly feeling paper thin. He sipped his tea. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Has Daniel told you lately how lucky he is?" I blinked. "We don't really talk like that anymore." "Why not?" I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. What could I tell him? That Daniel and I had grown distant, that our conversations had turned into checklists, that the passion we used to have was now buried under dishes, bills, and early bedtimes? Instead, I said, "I don't know." He stepped closer, not touching me, not yet, but closer than he needed to be for a casual chat over tea. "I'm sorry," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. "That must feel lonely." That word hit deeper than I expected. I swallowed hard. Sometimes. That was all it took, that one word. His hand came up again, gentle, slow, and cupped the side of my face. Not in a hurry, not forceful. Just there, warm, steady. "I would never," he started, then paused. "I mean, I know what this looks like, and I would never disrespect your marriage, or you. I care, more than I probably should." I felt it again, that thrum in my chest. That electric stillness between us. Elijah. I said his name like a warning, but it didn't carry much weight. "I should go," he said, and yet he didn't move. "You should," I agreed, but I didn't move either. And then we both laughed, quiet, breathless, almost like we were afraid someone else might hear, even though the house was completely silent. He looked at me then, really looked. And in that moment, there was so much unsaid. Years of things we didn't talk about in marriages, the little voids, the quiet parts where love used to live but now just hovered. I wasn't in love with Elijah, but I was hungry for something he seemed to carry in his presence, a warmth, a gentleness, a tension, and I knew he saw me, not just as Daniel's wife, as me. And then the power went out. Just like that, a flicker, then black. The air conditioner stopped, the fridge clicked off, and we were left in dim, late afternoon light. I fumbled for my phone, but I knew where the candles were. I went to the drawer by the microwave, found the box, and lit one. He moved closer again, holding the candle between us. The flickering light danced across his face. His expression was soft, unreadable. We were too close again, and this time neither of us pretended otherwise. "If I kiss you," he whispered, "would you stop me?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, but I didn't kiss him either. Instead, I stepped back just a little, enough to make the silence feel louder. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly, like he was grounding himself. When he opened them, I saw something shift in him. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was restraint, maybe both. He set the candle down carefully on the counter and whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded, but the apology didn't undo what had happened between us, and it definitely didn't prepare me for what was about to happen next. He turned to leave. I watched him walk toward the door, slow and quiet, like he was trying not to wake something up. My heart was pounding, and my fingers were still warm from where he'd touched me. Then I heard the sound. Keys. At the door. I froze. Elijah froze too. There's a kind of panic that doesn't scream, it just spreads, wide-eyed and breathless. I looked at him, and for one long second we were both still, listening, hoping we were imagining things, but we weren't. The key twisted in the lock, the door clicked open, and Daniel walked in. He wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday night. That was the plan. That was the schedule. But there he was, suitcase in one hand, phone in the other, brows slightly furrowed like something didn't sit right the moment he stepped inside. I hadn't even moved. Neither had Elijah, and we didn't have time to fake anything. There was no hiding the candlelight, no covering the silence, no explaining why I was standing there in my robe while our pastor stood only a few feet away, his face flushed, his mouth slightly parted. Daniel's eyes swept the room quickly. Candle. Me. Elijah. Me. Hey, he said finally, his voice flat. What's going on? The air was thick, too thick. I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. Elijah cleared his throat. Daniel, I just came by to check on your wife. We were just talking. Daniel set the suitcase down slowly, like his body wasn't fully connected to his brain yet, like he was still trying to convince himself this wasn't what it looked like. He looked at me, and I looked right back at him. Something shifted in his face, something hard, something unsure. Talking? He repeated, and his voice had an edge to it now. Just a little. Not loud, not angry, just sharp enough to cut the air between us. I stepped forward. He stopped by earlier. I wasn't expecting him. We had some tea. Elijah, can I talk to my wife alone? That came out colder than I'd ever heard him speak. Elijah hesitated, then gave me one last look, a question maybe, or an apology he couldn't say aloud, and walked toward the door. But Daniel blocked it with one hand before Elijah could pass. Why were the lights off? Daniel asked. You two sitting in the dark? Elijah's jaw tightened. There was an outage, just a few minutes ago. Daniel turned and glanced toward the hallway, like he didn't buy it but wasn't going to argue yet. He dropped his hand and stepped aside. Elijah left without another word, and the door clicked shut behind him. Silence. So loud, it rang in my ears. I turned back to Daniel, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at the counter, at the tea mugs, at the candle, at the towel I'd left on the back of the chair, the shape of a moment he hadn't been part of. I moved toward him slowly. Daniel. Nothing happened. He gave a soft, bitter laugh. Right. I'm serious. Are you? There was something about the way he asked that, not accusatory, not even angry, just tired, like this wasn't about just this moment, like maybe he'd seen it coming before either of us did. I reached out, touched his arm. I was lonely, that's all. You've been gone. Busy. We've been living like roommates. He looked at me, and this time I saw more than doubt in his eyes. I saw fear. Do you love him? He asked. My mouth opened, but no words came out, because I didn't. I didn't love Elijah, but I'd let something happen, something real, something I couldn't undo, and I didn't know how to explain that without making it worse. I don't, I said finally, but he saw me, and I missed that. Daniel closed his eyes. For a second, I thought he was going to walk out. Instead, he walked past me, into the kitchen, and poured himself a glass of water with shaking hands. I stood there in the doorway, watching him, feeling the heat of everything unraveling. He didn't say another word that night. We didn't sleep in the same room, and I couldn't stop wondering if he hadn't come home early. Would I have kissed Elijah? Would I have gone further? I didn't have the answer. And the not knowing, that was almost worse than anything. The next morning, the silence in our home felt louder than ever. Daniel didn't come into the bedroom that night, and I didn't go looking for him. I lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, the ceiling slowly turning into a canvas of regrets and what-ifs. Every sound, branches tapping the window, the fridge humming, my own breathing, felt too sharp, like the world was pressing in. I barely slept, and when I did drift off for a few minutes, I dreamed of Elijah. Not in the way you'd think. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't sexual. It was just him standing in the living room, looking at me like he knew something I didn't, like he was still there. When I came downstairs, Daniel was already dressed. His bag was packed again. He didn't even sit down, just moved around the kitchen like a guest. I've got a few things to handle at the office, he said without looking at me. I'll be gone most of the day. It was his way of saying, I don't want to talk, and I didn't blame him, but something inside me wouldn't let it go that easily. Daniel, I said quietly, I know how that looked last night, but you need to hear me when I say, nothing happened, not really. He finally turned to me. Not really? That stung. I mean, No lines were crossed. We didn't sleep together. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. Not like that. He looked at me long and hard. That doesn't make it better. I didn't know what to say to that. He was right. He grabbed his keys and paused by the door. And the worst part is, you didn't look surprised to see me. You looked caught. Then he walked out, and just like that, everything I'd been trying to hold together cracked. I sat down on the edge of the couch, hands trembling, my robe still hanging from the hook by the stairs, like a quiet reminder of the moment everything shifted. That evening I stayed home. I didn't eat much, just wandered through the house like a ghost in my own life. And then my phone buzzed. It was Elijah. Can we talk? Just talk. I need to explain myself, if you're willing. My fingers hovered over the screen for a long time before I typed back, not here. He replied almost immediately. Where then? I didn't even think. I just sent the name of the park at the edge of town, the one with the quiet trail by the lake. It felt neutral, public, safe. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on a bench under a tree, watching the water. It was dusk, the sky turning gray-orange, everything soft. He arrived wearing a hoodie and jeans, hands in his pockets, eyes guarded. He sat next to me without a word for a full minute. Then, "You okay?" I shrugged. "Not really." He nodded. "I'm sorry, for everything, for putting you in that position, for showing up, for touching you like that. I didn't mean to cross any lines." I looked at him. "But you did. We both did, even if it wasn't physical." He sighed. "I don't even know what I was thinking. I've been your pastor for years, and your friend, and Daniel's friend." "You made me feel seen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I didn't realize how much I missed that until it happened." He turned to face me fully. "You don't owe me anything, and I know I should have walked away, but that moment in your kitchen, it felt like we were the only two people in the world." I didn't respond, because it had felt that way. He leaned in slightly, not enough to touch, but close enough that I could smell his cologne again, close enough that my body remembered how tense I'd gone the last time we were like this. Then he whispered, "I can't stop thinking about what would have happened if he didn't walk in." My heart jumped. "Don't say that." "But you've thought about it too." I looked down at my hands. I had. Of course I had. And that's what scared me most. He reached for my hand but stopped just before our fingers touched. "You deserve to feel wanted, to feel alive again. And if Daniel's not doing that—" "Elijah." He went silent. I stared out at the lake. My voice came out thin. "I can't do this. I can't be the woman who makes excuses for a mistake she hasn't even made yet." "You haven't made a mistake." "Not yet." That word hung between us like fog. Not yet. We sat there until the sun dipped out of sight, and when he finally stood up to leave, he didn't try to hug me, didn't reach for me, just nodded once, then walked away. But the part that shook me? I wanted him to turn back, and when he didn't, that ache stayed with me all night. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I just kept pacing the bedroom floor, then sitting at the edge of the bed, then getting up again. I kept hearing Elijah's voice in my head. "You haven't made a mistake." And the way he didn't look back when he walked away, like he was leaving something unfinished on purpose. Daniel didn't come home, no call, no text. And I didn't reach out either because I didn't know what to say, not to him, not to myself. The truth sat in the center of my chest like a weight I couldn't move, the kind that hurts more the longer you try to ignore it. By morning, I was a mess, eyes puffy, stomach in knots, wearing the same clothes I'd worn the night before. And then I heard the knock, 3 firm taps at the front door. I froze. Part of me hoped it was Daniel, that he was back, and we could fight it out, cry it out, anything but this silence. But when I opened the door, it wasn't him. It was Elijah. Damp hair, tired eyes, same hoodie from yesterday. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "I shouldn't be here," he said right away. "I know that." I stepped aside anyway, and he walked in without another word.
We stood in the middle of the living room like we were back in that moment again, right before the door opened. Except this time, there were no candles, no tea, just heavy, raw air. I can't stop thinking about you, he said quietly. I've tried. God knows I've tried.
Elijah, I started, but he stepped closer. No, just let me say this. I'm not here to cross a line, I swear, but I need you to know something. He swallowed hard. I never looked at you like this before. Never. But something changed. And I don't know if it was the loneliness in your eyes or the way you held everything in, but the more I noticed you, the more I couldn't stop noticing. He looked like he hated himself for admitting it. I think I could fall in love with you, he whispered, and my heart cracked, because in some twisted, unspoken way, I felt it too. I looked down, afraid of what might happen if I looked him in the eyes any longer. But then, before I could say a word, the door behind us opened. Daniel. He walked in slowly, saw us standing there, and stopped cold. This time, there were no candles, no touching, but the energy in the room was loud, too loud to explain away. He looked at Elijah, then at me, and instead of yelling or accusing, he smiled, just a little, a cold, knowing smile. You two really think I didn't see this coming? Neither of us spoke. He walked over to the kitchen and set down his phone. Calm, collected, too calm. I saw the signs, he continued. The distance, the way you started texting less, the way you looked at me when I came home early, like I ruined something. Elijah just came to... Daniel raised a hand. Don't insult both of us with excuses. Then he turned to Elijah. You know, for a man of God, you've got a funny way of showing restraint. Elijah didn't... Didn't what? Daniel cut me off again. Didn't sleep with you? Not yet, right? Elijah took a step forward. Daniel, I think you need to calm down. Daniel laughed. Calm down? You're standing in my living room telling my wife you might be in love with her, and you want me to calm down? That's when I saw it. His hand. It was shaking, but not with rage, with control. He was holding something back. Elijah, maybe you should go, I said quietly. Daniel turned to me, eyes cold. No, let him stay. Let's all be honest here. Elijah was already backing toward the door. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come. Daniel's voice dropped. Yeah, well, a lot of mistakes were made this week. And just as Elijah opened the door to leave, Daniel picked up his phone again. He tapped the screen, then looked at me. You might want to check your email, he said. I blinked. What? He smirked. I figured if we were going to be honest, the whole church should hear it too. My stomach dropped. Elijah's not the only one who records his sermons, he added, and I've got audio from the kitchen, from the night I walked in. My blood went cold. You didn't. Oh, I did. And then he walked upstairs, calm, too calm. Elijah looked at me from the doorway, face pale, lips parted in disbelief. We stood there frozen, waiting, wondering. And that's when my phone vibrated, a new message from the church board, subject line, urgent, regarding allegations and recorded conversation. I didn't even open it, because I already knew everything was about to come crashing down. And the worst part, this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning.
If you want more real, emotional stories like this one, stick around. You might just hear one that hits close to home. Subscribe for more.